Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here today. Obviously, I'm Diane Gilson, and today, instead of pulling up the PDF, I happen to pull up the actual PowerPoint. So you'll see if these little side slides over here. And today, what we're going to be working on is a prompt policy workshop. This prompt is going to be able to help you draft internal policies in just a few minutes, if you think maybe 3 to 5 minutes of answering questions. I had run a test one, and in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through not the one that I already entered, but I'm going to actually do this with you. And you can do your own in the background, but you can also follow along with what I'm doing as well. And again, I always like to acknowledge Rachel and Laura, who are out there making sure that everything happens properly in the background, like the recordings and some of the things that are getting slid into the Zoom chat on your behalf so that you can then turn around and download them. Policies today. For a free version of ChatGPT, if you don't already have it, you can go to chat.openai.com and here's some instructions. And then also you can download this. They actually have the right PDF to put in the Zoom chat for you so that you can go ahead and get that. And any links that you see in there are functional, all safe, of course. And that way you can look back at any of the specifics in here that you'd like. I like to always talk about why are we getting together? I ought to just turn this around and ask you guys is why are you interested in AI? And what do you think is happening out there in the world? Okay,
I'll go if you would like me to, Diane. This is
sure.
Lori.
Hi.
And I was a little reticent to start using AI, thinking, oh, it's just for text updating grammar or things like that. But it really has become my personal assistant. And I'm super excited to see all the different ways I can incorporate it into my daily life, my work life, my home life, and my ability to help our clients. So super excited and glad to be here.
Cool. Thank you. So today, for instance, just before we got together, we went through the agonizing experience of ordering a new phone for me. I went out to ChatGPT and asked it to lay out the differences between all, what, 4 or 5 versions
4 or 5 versions of,
of
of the
the
phone.
iPhone 16. And of course, that was the easy part. AI helped us with that, but there were a lot of things to sign, a lot of choices to do. But it helped me figure out exactly which one of those phones I would like to get. So that's an example. And for our clients, we're doing work in the background to help our clients by using AI, ourselves, our teams, and our clients. We're recording, and those recordings will be available. I ought to take out that 5 to 7 business days. Recordings will be available as soon as we can get them out there for you, but there's a page that has all the recordings and the prompts and the downloads for the slides, etc.
I'll put
Um,
that link into our Zoom chat, Diane.
Great. Okay, so people can get to that page. Anybody here who would like to go back and look at any earlier ones, there's a lot of valuable information out there, so I invite you to take advantage of it. We will close the doors to the workshop when we first share prompts because, if we're going to explain what's in it or what we're doing, we don't want to have to back up and do that again for people coming in late. At about 10 after, I would say that we will go ahead and close the doors. Be careful with confidential information when you're putting information into ChatGPT. We talked last time a little bit about the concept in the background. You can tell, and I don't think we spent much time on this, but in the background settings, you can tell, oh, you can have access to my Google Drive. You can have access to my OneDrive. You can have access to, what was the other one? I don't recall.
Dropbox? You had mentioned
Dropbox.
Dropbox.
And you know what? When you give ChatGPT access to all of that, it's gonna go have access to all of it. And if you're carrying confidential information out there in any of those cloud services, you're giving access to ChatGPT. So I would be very hesitant to turn those sharing services on at least at this point, until some other security pieces get in place. I don't know that we'll have breakout sessions today. If we do, you'll see a timer on your screen. But lately, we've been having a little bit more the whole group sharing as we go through the process. And a little bit of a story behind how I got started. I just started like a lot of people. You just do one or two things, and then you do a couple more things. Then you go, oh, I wonder if it'll do this. The other thing is I got into this group called Simple, and I got some good underlying training about what are some of the things that ChatGPT can do on a conceptual higher level basis, and then practice doing that. And it then gave me ideas, and they don't all come to you at once, but as you're working through your day, all sorts of little things will pop up, and you go, oh, I'll just check ChatGPT. Oh, I'll ask ChatGPT to help me do that. Oh, I've had to do the same thing 10 times. Maybe ChatGPT, I can set up a prompt that it will do that for me easier, faster, and better next time. So, anybody at this point willing to talk about how they're getting involved with AI? Just hit your little down at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to see the thing to raise your hand. And a lot of the value of this is just learning from each other as to what we're doing. It's not like I'm a master teacher. This is all designed for us to share with each other. Laura, why don't you jump in and tell us about something that you're doing that you've done lately with AI?
I've used ChatGPT for many of my technical questions. Occasionally, I'll have a question that isn't related to work, so I can put it off out into a different project. But the technical questions, it's very good about being able to answer. I love the way that I can ask it to put it into a chart, put it into a table for me. Oh, something I discovered the other day was that a teammate shared a chat with me, and I was able to say, oh, okay, I like that information, but now I've got more questions. So I went out into the chat, asked my questions in that chat, and all of a sudden it stayed in my history. I didn't have to bookmark that chat that somebody had shared with me. So it became my chat. I could put it into the project and that type of thing. So I thought that was really helpful. Just discovering new things about how I can use it on a daily basis. So that's how I've been using Chat GPT.
Cool. Thank you. I see Michael has his hand up. Go ahead and
Yeah,
share.
last week or now 2 weeks ago, I think, since I was leading a walking tour for Scaling New Heights on the exhibit floor, Heather wanted a bio on me. So I had it write my bio based on what it knew. I just had to tweak it a little bit, but that was it. So it took 2 minutes and I sent it back to her.
That's great. And normally, in the past, when somebody's asked me for something like that, I agonize over it for an hour and a half. I don't know, or maybe a little bit less. We just go, oh man, I got to do a bio, and they want it to be 320 words to fit in whatever they're doing, and then you have to rewrite it, anything else that you've already done, to
Yep.
fit it into that number of words. Great, thank
Yeah, and
you.
I see Joy has joined us.
Hi, Joy. Glad to have you here.
Hello, thank you.
And yeah, that's great. Thanks for Michael has invited people into these sessions, and we're nearing the end of this set of sessions. So maybe people can be thinking as we meet for the last set of this series in mid-July about some other things that you might like to do in the future, topics, if we want to get into what's going on in the world of AI and etc. We'll think with you, but we invite your suggestions as we move forward. Great. All right. So now what we're going to do is you can download and save this PDF slide deck. You've probably already been able to do that. And you can download and copy today's prompt into your AI. I'm going to today be walking through the prompt. We did it that way last time, but Lori kind of ran it and then gathered answers from the group. Today, I'm going to try, I had already walked through it, but this will be fresh and we'll do this all together today. You can do it on your own in the background, and I'll be walking through it here on the screen. So then maybe you guys can get some ideas from that.
I know that we had a couple of folks come in just a few minutes ago. So before we close the entry, I'm going to go ahead and drop the PDF that Diane is showing today. I'm going to put that into the chat. And then the prompt that Diane is working with today, I'm going to drop that into the chat, but don't worry about opening it and using it right now because Diane's going to do the demo on that. But I am putting that into the chat so that everyone in the meeting can download it, save it, make it their own.
Yep.
Thanks, Diane.
And it's certainly fine if you want to work on it in the background while I'm walking through it here too, but we just thought we'd change it out a little bit and do it that way. Our objectives today is to be thinking about what kinds of policies might be missing in your company or for clients that you're working with. They present you with a problem, something has not been working right in the company, and they might be a little stressed about it. You could maybe help them put a policy in place. Do you have any bad or outdated policies that should be reviewed? Something comes up and you go, what's the policy? And we go look at it and we go, life has changed since that policy was written. Maybe we need to do something about it. Again, maybe some clients that could benefit from the insights that you could provide. And the other thing is to think about how much time and energy gets lost due to non-existent or poor or poorly misunderstood policies. So these are all ideas I'd like to share with you to get those creative thoughts rolling, because policy sounds kind of dull, but in fact, they're really important and can keep things running along much more smoothly than they would without having one. Our time frames this is how we started out in terms of splitting things out with people working individually. Today, we're just going to change it out and do things a little differently. So let's take a look here at our prompt. And if you look through it, it's like programming, but it's not programming. It's like being able to talk to another person or an assistant. However, keeping in mind that assistant that you have, they're going to be further ahead if you can present information to them or your request to them in some sort of an organized fashion. And that I think is really the big key to writing a prompt, is to just think about what are the steps and how do they fit together sequentially and integrate. So as you look through this prompt, I'm not going to sit here and read the whole thing to you, but you'll notice that we have steps in here and questions that AI is going to ask you. And we've said we want to see, I had looked up these books about policies, and I said, I believe that AI has access to these books and the information in these books. So sometimes we've worked with a single book. In this case, I went out and grabbed three. Said, nobody, one person has the right answer, but here are three tips and concepts from these books, and then give us a brief list of some common issues or recurring problems that are faced by people in my kind of work, because we ask this up front. What kind of work do we do? What is our role? What size company are we in? So we're going to get this personalized to us, as opposed to just, oh, this would be a good policy for a manufacturing company if you're not a manufacturing company. So then after it tells us some of the things that to help us brainstorm about some of those things, ask me three short coaching questions, one at a time, to help clarify what kind of policy I should develop, I being ChatGPT. And after each of the answers, reply only with noted and proceed to the next question. And then we have some additional steps. So after the coaching questions are answered, ask whether to move forward. Before presenting the draft, ask, is this deliverable going to be useful and applicable? So we want it to be interacting and checking in, verifying that it's heading in the right direction. And then, of course, the last step is to present a policy draft and then ask, before we wrap up, do you have any concerns or uncertainties about this? So maybe now that you've started seeing things, you're going, well, that looks kind of okay, but what about thus and so? If so, let's pinpoint the issue and adjust the policy together. And once I've shared my answers, provide a policy draft that's relevant to my company or the client's setting, easy to review and reflect on in a few minutes, and clear enough to be submitted for management review in the event that you have to submit this into another area of the company. So I've highlighted everything with a Control A. I'm going to go over here and do a Control V to paste.
So this is a demo. Diane's going through it today, and I told her when I had gone through the prompt earlier, I'm glad that she's going to go through the demo because the first response after I had provided my role and number of people, et cetera, I had to stop and think about it. So I was really glad that she's going to do the demo today so that she can jump in with a policy suggestion.
Right.
Everybody else can download the prompt and run it in the background if you wanted to, but I just wanted to provide that feedback, Diane. I'm glad I don't have to think of that policy off the top of my head.
Well, I had to test it, and it actually even got a tiny revision after the fact. So this will be the first time through on this, slightly modified from my original one. My company type. Now, here's a little tip too. I use something called Text Expander, and you can do something very similar, or you can just keep the information in a .txt file so you don't have to type it out everything. And so it asks about my company type, etc. And so I just put in z.ceo and it just drops all that information in for ChatGPT. You can keep all that information knowing that this is something you're probably going to use over and over again. So I give it some information about our company, about the people that work here, not about them particularly, but how many people and what's our structure. And I give them my personal bio and say where that's located. And I say we're different than a typical accounting firm because we don't do bookkeeping or tax services and so on. So I try to give it that context to work with. And having it handy to just go in with a keystroke or two is really nice. Okay, so it said after you tell me this, I'm going to come back in and yeah, I don't need to give it any more information about my role. I just had it all globbed together in that first piece. Your company size. And so it's basically saying I've mentioned me, another pro advisor, our COO, and a virtual assistant. And yes, the answer is yes. Recordus is a 4-person company. A summary of key concepts from these 3 policy writing books. And I asked it to give us this information in 400 to 500 words, really get it condensed for us. And it gives me the names of the books, which we already had in the prompt. And then what makes a policy clear, practical, and effective? And so this is just really nice information that you can, when you get it, you could copy it out and paste it and put it out in your OneNote or in a company manual or whatever. But guidelines for making a policy useful for you. And it says based on different authors, they have some information for you from those viewpoints. So you don't have to work with just one book and one author. Involve the people who are going to use it, version control and review, match your policy to the risk level. So, in other words, you could likely have a lighter, shorter policy for something that's not such a big deal. But if there is something that's pretty major, how we maintain client confidentiality in our company, that's a high risk level thing. So you're going to have a more detailed type of policy. It says each author reminds us that a written policy isn't enough. Policies only help when team members are trained on them and when they're referenced during onboarding, performance reviews, or decisions. You can have a policy manual, kind of like a budget. You can just throw it in the drawer and forget about it, or you can actually make it a living document. So common problems solved by internal policies at a company like ours, it gives us some pain points. And as I look down through here, Laura said, "Oh, I didn't know what to write about." Here we have some ideas of things that could potentially be available for us to create a policy around. And what we've done, our company has changed quite a bit over the last year and a half. We're shifting some responsibilities, we're pivoting how we're working with clients and what kinds of activities we're doing. We've brought in some additional support help. And I decided that I would pick up this unclear division of responsibility because what happens in many cases is I'll try to explain this in the best way I can. I have done almost everything when it comes to any kind of marketing. I had somebody else do social work for me, but I handled all the incoming client inquiries, both from the sales side and delivery. I had some help around the edges, but I was still taking care of a huge amount of what's going on. Now we're changing that. I'm sharing those responsibilities out to other people. But the thing is, I'm quite often not handing them specific procedures or policies to follow. So I said, this would be a good one to take a look at. And it takes some introspection about what's going wrong sometimes. And it's not that we have a lot going wrong, but I know that for people to take something on when there's not a clear policy can be difficult. It's difficult on both sides.
Diane mentioned a really important thing there is that she's worn all of the different hats in the company, and she's handled and taken care of all of the procedures in a certain way. And when she brings somebody in to help out, not having a clear understanding of what needs to be done can be confusing and produce the wrong results. So the additional benefit of having a policy is that there's clear definitions of what it is, what needs to be done, what the expected results are. Is that an accurate reflection, Diane?
Yeah, so as responsibilities change, how do we go about doing that? How do we make it so that everybody has a good experience? So what's the one recurring issue? I'm going to copy and paste that in here. And I don't think we're all that unique. Anybody who's growing their company, bringing other people in, now you want people to do some of the things you've done in the past, unless you sit down and really work on it, it can be difficult for everybody. Okay, so when this issue comes up, what's the impact on your team's time, client experience, or your personal workload? So I would say sometimes efforts get duplicated. Sometimes, actually, I'm going to put these in a little bit more of a list so I don't have to keep typing sometimes. Sometimes efforts get duplicated, different messages get delivered by different people. Communication styles differ from person to person. It's the impact on the time. Time gets lost trying to, I'm going to say, figure out how to do a specific, I don't like the word task, but specific job.
The other thing that came to mind, Diane, was that if we don't have a clear policy and understanding of who's handling what, something might fall through the cracks.
Yeah, so either things could be duplicated or they could get desired actions could get not completed. Isn't that a great English sentence? Anybody else? Lori, do you have any? I'm calling on my team members for them to talk about experiences as we transition from having me do certain things and having them do certain things.
Well, and then the underlying effect of all of those items that you put up there is rework, the time it takes to have to redo something because it didn't get done the way it was intended.
Like that. Shai, do you have anything to offer?
Oh, good.
Good to go, Diane.
Yeah,
All right.
good to go.
So I think that's enough for it to work with. We've given it some things, and it's got the book to look at. Now it's got our stuff to look at. Let's see what's the next thing. So where does this confusion tend to happen most often? I would say client onboarding, but when I've been used to handling all the clients and now I'm sharing that with Lori and trying to figure out what's the division of duties between us. So I'm going to grab that one. And of course, I'm sharing from my side of what's happening with my company. And everybody's doing a really good job. They're doing their best. But there are some things that sometimes we could figure out how, as a team and a company, to do it a bit better. When I want to move forward and generate a draft policy, if yes, I'll ask a few more follow-up questions. And I'll say, yes, that's what we want to do today. Let's see what else it's going to interview us. So that's another way you can use ChatGPT is have it interview you. Say, I'd like you to be an interviewer and interview me about a certain topic. So that's a really good way to start a blog topic and that type of thing if you want. So which team members are currently involved in client onboarding and what are their general roles during that process? So I would say incoming calls handled by the VA, unless Lori recognizes the name, say, and catches the call. Then there's a discussion, discovery discussion. With the client. Then I'd say, I'll go back and catch the spelling here in a minute. Then Lori decides if she needs to touch base with Diane or if she can handle the potential, either the client or potential client. I'm going to say she then moves forward. You want to help me out, Lori? Any other thing we can add in here?
No, I think that's pretty good, Diane.
Okay. Oh, I'll put one more thing in here. If Diane becomes a part of solving the client issue, I'll call it an issue. Lori schedules meetings and then we decide,
Right.
then we collaboratively decide how to move forward.
Before you push go, did you tell who Lori, Diane, and things like that in the description?
I think
I thought you gave
did.
the
I should have said pro advisor. That's a good idea. Thank you. Lori, our other pro advisor. Should probably say certified, but okay, decides if she needs to touch base. Good point,
Yep.
Rachel. We need to know
Yep.
who's who.
And Diane, I'm looking at the clock a little bit as well. I'm sure you're keeping an eye on the time too.
Yep. Thank you. We're going to see what it comes up with. What specific problems or gaps do you want the onboarding policy to solve? I'd say on occasion, we may duplicate efforts, or one person doesn't know what the other person is doing or thinking. I mean, that's pretty common in life, right? Whether it's husband and wife or between two team members, there's so much going on. And sometimes workloads need to be reallocated. And it will right now, just because we're talking it through and thinking about it, it's taken a little bit. Do you have or want any specific tools, checklists, or systems tied into this policy? So in here, I would say would like a flow chart. Let's see, checklists. Anything else? Flow charts.
Do you want to mention any
checklists?
specific tools like Monday.com or Excel or
Explanation of supporting tools, e.g. Monday.com, Excel, pre-done templates. Oh, I'd say update meetings because we're just brainstorming here and then we're going to see pretty soon what we're going to get. So we're looking for a policy that doesn't just explain who does what. You want it to include the tools and structure that will make follow through easy and repeatable. I like that. And I don't know if any of you guys are doing this in the background on your own, but we're doing it this way today. So here's our client onboarding responsibility policy. And we're going to put a date in and how often we're going to review it, who does it apply to, pretty much everybody. Our purpose, it gives us our purpose. The policy minimizes duplicated effort, closes communication gaps, and supports a professional and efficient client experience. Oh yeah, that we didn't even talk about what the client experience was. And we take great pride in having our clients be happy, but I just didn't put that in there earlier. In the scope, it applies to all incoming client inquiries, discovery calls, and onboarding steps for new or returning clients. Policy statement, procedures and role assignments, who's going to do what, here's the step. And of course, we would look through this step by step, make sure that we like the way that it's set up and that it makes sense. Supporting tools and systems. So here's an onboarding checklist in monday.com or Excel, tracking each step, pre-done email templates, folder and file setup, statement of procedures, internal handoff meeting, responsibilities, how often it's going to be reviewed, next steps for implementation, and so on. Now, before we wrap up, do you have any concerns or uncertainties about the draft policy? Now, the first time I did this, it set things up a little differently, and that's why it's fun to take the same problem and run it through the prompt a couple times. You're going to get different results. One of the things that it wanted us to do was create more procedures. And so one of the things I said, a problem is sometimes we're so busy that we don't document all of the steps we're taking with clients. Now, in this case, we do recordings, so we can go back to look at those. Again, that's going back. So this is a critique. It's not really dealing with that problem. So I'm going to ask it to solve that problem.
And while it's solving, something that occurred to me as we were getting to this point, Diana, is that we're talking about policies as compared to procedures. Procedures are the step-by-step. This is the thing that you do. This is the next thing that you do, etc. So the difference between this and a policy is significant. A procedure is our step-by-step, and a policy is what we generally expect to be done or that needs to be done. Is that an accurate reflection of the differences, Diane?
Yep. So this, I could go on. And the other thing is you could take a policy, you could implement it. And then, of course, the idea is that it wants you to go back in and review it periodically. And you go, we tried this and this, there's a wrinkle here. Let's run it back through and see what we can get if we run it again and say, here's a wrinkle. Here's something that we would like to do differently. And you can get that change really quickly. I know that in a lot of companies, getting policies created, approved, run through the system, distributed, and or getting that approval process might take 2 or 3 meetings with 6 people sitting around the table. The whole idea is to see if you can make it more applicable to your particular company size and so on. So did anybody else go through this in the background for themselves? I'm seeing nods of no. You were also fascinated with my canoodling here.
The other thing I thought about, Diane, when I was taking a look at it to run it through the first time, is that my role is different than your role. So the output, I would expect that the output would be different. And I would expect that the policy that I would want to have it take a look at would be significantly different. I thought that was something to think about as you're implementing or running this through ChatGPT yourselves.
Here's the one that I ran the first time, and I was actually happier with this one. And again, you never get the same thing. This had to do with internal task handoffs and documentation standards. So if I decide that I would like Shai to start doing something that I used to do, or even start doing something that I didn't used to do, or Lori, the same case, how do I get that information? What's the policy about a task handoff and documentation? Okay, and so what This is talking about what triggers a task handoff. And these are the kind, maybe there's a temporary, permanent or temporary role change. And then here's the responsibility. Who initiates the handoff? And required deliverables for a handoff, moving things from one person to another, because that certainly happens with teams. Storage and access, timeline for completion, fast track transitions if something has to happen quickly, implementation and continuous improvement. And so then I turned around and asked it a couple of other, it says, I can help you build out a flow chart or some of these other things. Yeah. So that was the first one I did. It just depends on what you give it to work with and see what you're going to get. Any thoughts? Anybody have any feedback, ideas?
Well, I like seeing the comparisons between the two, Diane. I really do
Okay.
like that because the idea of the handoffs is critical to the idea that we're talking about. Oh, okay, here's something that needs to be done, but it's a completely different activity. So thank you for showing us that second one. That was great because
Okay.
I'm going, yeah, handoffs. You could do handoffs by going, oh, we could have a meeting, we could take a recording, and then we do this, and then we review anyway. So
Yeah.
that tickled my fancy.
Could you
Good.
ask in ChatGPT if, given that some of you are in close proximity and some of you are over the internet,
Uh-huh.
how would that would change it? Because I know that some of my companies are all in one building, and so it's easy to pass a paper versus they're
Great
on the
idea.
internet. They have to make sure they're in the same time zone or have to work with time zones that way.
And as it's interviewing you and asking about some of the difficulties that you face, that would be, I think, a good thing to talk about is, oh, we have people working in 15 different locations, all in different time zones. That becomes part of your description. You could throw that in on the front end, I think, when you say what type of company it is. On the other hand, if it starts developing something for you, then you can redirect it and say, oh, could you take this into account? And I think in this case, just a minute, somewhere in here, I'd have to go look for it. Somewhere along in here, I said, I brought up the time constraint thing because,
Mhm.
this particular policy said, oh, you should do this. And when there's a handoff, you should
Mhm.
document it and do this and this. And I went, well, sometimes you don't have time to do that before the handoff takes
Yeah.
place. So what do you do then? And I don't see it now. I actually ran this a couple of times,
No, I
but
remember you putting that in. The documentation is not always able to be
possible.
done.
Yeah, that's the one I just did today, but I had done another similar kind of thing. And it said, oh, do you want me to put a section about that into the policy? And I said, yes. And it reworked the policy to fold that concept in. And it called it fast track transition. There it is, fast track transitions there. So, in cases where a task must be reassigned immediately due to deadlines, absences, or shifting priorities, the standard handoff documentation may be postponed with the following safeguards. So, it kind of rewrote it for me when
Mhm.
I brought that up as an issue. So the idea is just to interact. Anybody have any ideas of policies that they might want to try writing? Maybe not in front of the whole group.
One thing that I thought of while you were doing this is use this and then have it actually come up with the SOP. So it already has the history of the policy to come up with the SOP based on this policy.
And I think it offered the other one that I just did. I think it might have offered just a minute.
And I
I'm
expect that
peering
you
around
would be
my
able to provide it with some additional details in that case, Michael, as far as, oh, okay, here are the tools that we work with. Here is who owns this responsibility or something. I bet that would provide some really
Yeah.
interesting
And
output.
and what I would do, especially for clients, is I wouldn't put in the person's name, I would put their role
Role.
and do it
yeah.
by role. And then maybe have a table at the bottom of who's in what role, but for the whole
Uh-huh.
policy and that have it just by role
Yeah, because people change, people come and go, but different
and
roles
get
need to
promoted.
do. Yeah. Uh-huh. Exactly. Good insights. So I hope you found it helpful to just sit while somebody was putting one of these together. You guys have been doing it independently all along, and we'll probably go back to that for the last couple, but with some heavy duty interaction. So I'm totally open to hearing any feedback from people. I'm going to move on and take a quick look here at our next. We've gone through our quote unquote library time, the reflections, our takeaways, the AI tips. This is quick and easy. Pin a chat. So here's how to pin a chat if you want to keep something at the top of your chat list.
And this is for ChatGPT, right, Diane?
Yes, yeah. So the first one is how to pin that chat. The other thing is I have been working with some custom GPTs, and I'm not going to try to train you guys how to do custom GPTs, but you know what? If you want to ask ChatGPT how to do a custom GPT, it's going to tell you how to do it. And what's a custom GPT is something that will repeat over and over again. Now, you saw me fill that one thing in with my text expander. I'm getting tired of typing all this stuff out. So I want to have something that I can quickly drop in. You can do the same thing with prompts. You can, with almost no effort, if you get your prompt working the way you want it, and it's something that you need to do over and over again, then you can create a custom GPT and it will stay. I'm gonna move over here, and these are projects. These are custom GPTs. My friend sent me, not for me, but I knew somebody was having an issue with a car. He wrote a car problem analyzer. And if you put in your make and model, year, mileage, and the problems that you're encountering, it will give you a list of things that you should consider. So sometimes you take the car in and they go, oh, you need a whole new blah 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 for $3,000. On the other hand, you also get a list of other things you might want to double check before you make that big investment. There are all sorts of things you can do from that standpoint with set up your custom GPTs. So those are the tips for today. And let's see, what do we have coming up? Our last two get-togethers will be on Tuesday, the 15th. And this one we talked about last time, what we might want to do in AI for business. And we're going to do marketing multipliers. We're going to have two different prompts, one that says, based on a particular product or service that you offer, you can direct it to a web page or just describe it. Write me a blog article that addresses the why behind what you're doing, or you can change the prompt to say whatever you want, but it will write you a blog article. And the other one is go ahead and write me a series of social content and customize it to the type of media that it is. So a post on LinkedIn is going to be of a different nature than a post in Facebook, which will be different than one that goes to Instagram or one of the other many social networks with whom I do not interact. But we still have to post out there. And the trick is to not be staring at a blank sheet of paper, but to say, oh, here's my theme. My theme is this type of a service. I want to start putting some posts out there within the different networks like that. And then on Friday, 7/18, we're going to look at a book called Simple Rules, How to Thrive in a Complex World. I thought that might be a really nice way for us to wrap up, as we are just facing so many things coming at us all the time. And is there a way to help simplify that a bit, make our lives a bit calmer? I'm really looking forward to that because I find myself creating a lot of different things going on around me. Hopefully, this will be helpful for all of us. So that's what we have in mind. And of course, the last page is information about getting in touch with us and some of the products that I've developed over the years to help with job costing. Any questions before we wrap today?
Just a quick wrap up. If anybody needs to request a copy of the slides, Rachel put the email in the AI and tech at infoplusacct.com email address. You can access the slides at. Earlier in the chat, I included a link to the page that you can get to that has all of our prior workshops on it. It also has information on how you can sign up for our future AI workshops. And I think that covers most of the questions that we've got. Just be sure if you've got any questions, reach out to us and we will get the recording slightly edited, but we'll get the recording out there shortly along with the prompt, the text of the prompt. Anything else that you can think of that we needed to mention?
Nope. I'm looking forward to having everybody show up in a couple more weeks. I hope everybody's having a great summer, and a happy 4th of July is coming up for everyone. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye.